Marvel's MCU Phase 5 is officially underway, and one of the projects I personally am the most excited for is Daredevil Born Again. And last week, Kevin Feige, in an interview with EW, actually briefly discussed Daredevil Born Again and brought up an interesting point that I haven't seen a lot of people talking about and wanted to just briefly discuss it with you here today. But before we get into it, if you're a fan of Marvel, DC, or horror, we talk about all of that stuff here on the channel. And if you wouldn't mind, consider subscribing. It really does help us support us and reach more listeners like you. Thanks so much. Let's get into it. During Marvel's Phase 4, we've certainly seen a lot of different projects that felt more disconnected from the rest of the MCU. Moon Knight is a perfect example where it doesn't really have that many connective tissues or crossovers with other characters. And in a world where projects share an interconnected story, characters jump between other properties, it has started to change a little bit as of late. And when it comes to Daredevil Born Again, that's something else that Kevin Feige said that they'd be leaning into. Quote, "It's Charlie Cox and Vincent D'Onofrio. They're amazing actors and storytellers in their own right." That's sort of what I was talking about with the fun of episodic television. That's really where we're experimenting with that, with Daredevil in particular. Now, Charlie Cox back in December said, "I'm fascinated to discover why they've chosen to do 18 as in episodes. I'm imagining there's going to be an element to it that is like the old school procedural show, not necessarily case of the week, but something where we go really deep into Matt Murdock the lawyer and get to see what his life is like. If that's done right and he really gets his hands dirty with that world, I think there's something quite interesting about that, to spend a lot of time in a superhero's day-to-day life and you really earn the moments when he suits up." Now, I do think that those two statements from Kevin Feige this week and Charlie Cox back in December, in some degrees, are connected, because in this interview with EW, Kevin Feige basically went out of his way to say, yes, we are doing episodic television, but it's going to be more standalone episodes. And he doesn't necessarily specify on exactly what that means. I can just speculate. Maybe it means that each episode is going to have a beginning, middle, and end. We've heard Kevin Feige before bring up Star Trek and reference Star Trek in the past. Another example where episodes are standalone stories, where each story has a beginning, middle, and end, and then the next episode is a completely different story, and it's completely separate in its own entity. It sounds like Daredevil Born Again is going to be more of that route, and he did mention the fact that he knows that the Netflix version ended on cliffhangers a lot of the times, or had a certain lead, a certain direction that the overall season was building towards, and had Kingpin as a big bad. This sounds like there's a potential that Kingpin might not actually be the big bad, or if he is, he might not be in every episode, or every episode might not be even about whoever the big bad is. Might be more independent and more standalone, like your previous comic book movies before the MCU era, where comic book movies like Green Lantern, or maybe that's a bad example, maybe the Dark Knight trilogy, or the first Iron Man or Spider-Man with the Sam Raimi universe, where those heroes were on their own. They were standalone properties. Sounds like maybe Daredevil will have a lot of episodes that are at least written in that format. Now, whether or not that means She-Hulk is going to show up, She-Hulk probably is going to show up. I have no doubt about that in my mind at all. But I would be more confident now, after hearing these comments, to say she's probably not going to be a reoccurring character. If she does show up, it's probably only going to be in an episode, maybe an arc. It is very interesting to see what direction they go with. There's very different story elements that they could use if they're going to pull anything at all from the Born Again storyline or different comics. This standalone format could open up endless possibilities of doing standalone stories where maybe there's even time jumps in between. Who knows when this show is even going to take place, or when certain episodes might take place in different times of the MCU. Or maybe it's more in line with what Charlie Cox is saying back in December, where Maybe it's just the old school procedural show format. But whatever you guys think, let us know in the comments below, as we always love to hear your thoughts. And that will do it for today's video. If you enjoyed, please give it a like, as it really does help support us. That will do it. Thanks for being here. Until next time, have a great day.